No Buzz, a Jespy's Book Club. Um, I have read my second Simenon, my second Maigret, Pietr the Latvian, Pietr, uh, the first Maigret novel. Although looking into it, I guess it was the first Maigret in that it was serialized first, even though it was published like fourth or fifth initially in like the publication order, as it were. I grabbed this because we got a shit ton of Maigret, and a coworker has been talking about it. I talked about Maigret and the Headless Corpse, which I quite enjoyed. And when I grabbed that on the recommendation, I was like, well, we have the first and the last one also, so maybe I'll poke at those and just sort of get a shape of the field. And frankly, the first book isn't that good. um, it's written like a Nancy Drew book. There's ellipses and exclamation points everywhere. The chapters sort of always end on these very weird, not very compelling, um, it's sort of cliffhangers, and like that's I like Nancy Drew. We know this. We know that I love Nancy Drew here, and it like weirdly makes sense given that you know basically contemporaneous. I want to say Nancy Drew was initially published in like the 20s to the 30s and 40s, and then the sort of the like iconic ones that we still see around are the republications in the 50s that like aged her up a little bit and made some other minor changes. But um, they obviously couldn't be farther apart in terms of a sort of tone and um, sort of ambiance in general. Maigret, very hard boiled, very psychological. People die in Maigret novels. They do not die in Nancy Drew novels. The sort of intended audience is very clearly somebody who would be interested in a proto Interpol situation for Maigret, and not, you know, the classic boiled beef sort of situation of Nancy Drew. Um, but yeah, like my other big sort of touchstone, of course, is Camilleri's uh, Inspector Montalbano series. Wow, that was upsetting. I'm trying to find this line that I wanted to read out loud that I was going to do before I hit record, but then I forgot, and then I hit record, so now I'm recording. Um, did I say a Just Bees Book Club? I think I did. Um, Upsetting to have forgotten Montalbano's name, however briefly there. I think I need to head back into Camilleri and read one of the ones I haven't read yet, because there we go, page 108. Because books are delightful, and it's been a couple of years since I've read any of them. I think, that's wild. But yeah, I think the things, again, this is only my second Maigret, but like the things that stuck out to me especially were like, number one, Maigret is there. Number two, the tone is there. This is sort of like exemplified in things like it being pissing rain all the time, him brooding with his pipe, him standing very stock still in the middle of a bustling area, like on a stakeout, but he's not like, it's not the sitting in the car watching stakeout, although those also happen, but Maigret's kind of stakeout is just like standing in the middle of a hotel restaurant, like staring at somebody. All that stuff is completely there. And from at least Maigret and the Headless Corpse, I will say, I do think Simenon's just basic prose style improves over time. There's a lot of just really clunky shit in this book. It's trying to do a thing with doppelgangers and twins and twinning and like, and it's confusing in the way that those things are very confusing when they're written poorly, and this one is. Ultimately, like I think I sort of had figured out what the gist of the thing was about halfway through. Again, that's not like a positive or a negative judgment in my brain because it's like just not what I'm interested in. But I sort of figured out the shape of the mystery, and I also say that's not because it's because I'm not. It's because that's not what I'm interested in. It's also clearly from these two books not what Simenon is interested in. Um, there's like there's not a lot of Scooby Doo happening here. There's not a lot of like red herrings showing up. It's for the two books I've read. It's basically just like, oh yeah, that guy seems like he probably did it, and then you get to the end of the book and it's like, okay, so that's why he did it. How he did it maybe also, but like, yeah, the question largely isn't who, but why in the done it department from the Simenon I've read. And like I appreciated sort of seeing that immediately, just being like, okay, yeah, like Maigret is full formed. He is a detective who just wants his pipe, wants to follow his leads, and occasionally has like moments of real sort of psychological insight, which is good. I like that. It's a nice thing to read a short book of. And yeah, sort of the negatives of just like the writing kind of got real clunky in pieces, and I'm sure that like shows up and down across the 75 novels or whatever, because there's like 75 of these things plus 30 short stories plus the other 300 books the man wrote. Not even wrote, it got published, just the actual sort of like wild part. Yeah, but there's this like there's a let's see, I'll read a chunk from the middle that I think exemplifies both the good things about Simenon's writing and some of the more awkward things, which is to say the dialogue most of the time. Maigret had never seen a man get drunk at such lightning speed. It's true, he had also never seen anyone fill a tumbler to the brim with whiskey, knock it back, refill it, knock the second glass back, and do the same a third time before shaking the bottle over his mouth to get the last few drops of 104 degrees proof spirit down his throat. The effect was impressive. Pietr went crimson, and the next minute he was white as a sheet, with blotches of red on his cheeks. His lips lost their color. He steadied himself on the low table, staggered about, then said with the detachment of a true drunk, "This is what you wanted, isn't it?" He laughed uncertainly, expressing a whole range of things. Fear, irony, bitterness, and maybe despair. He tried to hold onto a chair, but knocked it over, then wiped his damp brow. "You do realize that you never have managed by yourself. Sheer luck." Maigret didn't move. He was so disturbed by the scene that he nearly put an end to it by having the man drink or inhale an antidote. And then he goes on, but yeah, that scene of the Latvian knocking back an entire bottle of whiskey in like 3 glasses immediately, just like bop bop bop. That's the world that Maigret walks around in, even if it's like posited as a sort of exceptional thing, and that he's never seen anything quite like it before. And also that was that yeah. What was the line again exactly? You do realize that you never have managed by yourself. ... Sheer luck. ... It's like it's goofy. Yeah. That sounds about right. That sounds about as much as I have thought about Pietr the Latvian by Georges Simenon. Is there anything else? The ending's fine. Doppelganger shit. I don't know. I will actually. I kind of skimmed through it again, and now that I'm sort of ruminating, just being explicit about the ending here. You know what that means? It means I'm being explicit about the ending. We basically get a confession from Pietr that thanks for not watching. That the person running around as Pietr across the book has been the actual Pietr's twin, who was like who murdered Pietr at the beginning of the book because Pietr had sort of stolen his lover, like the one woman he ever felt he could like truly love, and then gotten embroiled in this in his scheme, and his sort of plan was to kill him, his lover, and himself, even though his brother had already had kids with this woman. Um, and I bring this up for two reasons. Number one, because the bleakness is very there. Throughout the whole book, Maigret has basically, like, every time he's like, well, fuck, I know who did it, but everything I have is circumstantial. I have nothing, like, pinning anyone to anything. I can't make an arrest. If I made an arrest, it would just, like, fall apart in court immediately. So I guess I just have to keep following this guy around. And that's sort of like the narrative conceit that keeps the thing going as long as it does. But it also holds true through the end. He gets the confession. And then Pietr's brother, who's been sort of masquerading as Pietr, is like, okay, well, they took my gun when they took my clothes. And Maigret just nods to his revolver, and then Pietr just walks past him. Maigret just sits still until he hears a gunshot. And then you get a cutaway to... How exactly does this work again? I just reread this, but... yeah, you just get a cutaway to... He sipped it slowly, or was he just pretending to drink? He was holding his breath. Then the bang, he gulped his drink down. Administratively speaking, the events were as follows. On ... 19th November ... at 10 p.m., verified an individual by the name of Hans Johansson, born in Pskov, Russian Empire, of Estonian nationality, unemployed, residing at the Rue de Roisia, Rue de Sicile. Oof. Couldn't even do the bad American pronunciation of it. Paris, after confessing to the murder of his brother, Pietr Johansson, on ... November of the same year in the train at Étoile du Nord, took his own life by shooting himself in the mouth shortly after his arrest in Fécamp by Detective Chief Inspector Maigret of the Flying Squad. The 6mm bullet traversed the palate and lodged in the brain. Death was instantaneous. As a precaution, the body has been taken to the morgue. Receipt of corpse has been acknowledged. And then there's another chapter. And it's just Maigret and Madame Maigret, like, sort of convalescing, or specifically Maigret, because he's been shot in the middle of this book. And he's just like, yeah, there's the trial's gonna happen, and then it ends on these very weird images. I'll just say, the moment of climax is the confession of Hans, of Pietr's twin. But it does a very weird thing in sort of Denament. Like, the breakaway to the official, like, telegram is a pretty clear callback, I think, because, like, literally the first sentence of this book, right? Chapter 1, apparent age 32, height 169. ICPC to PJ Paris Exvust Krakow Vimontra MGHKS TRIV PSOT UV Pietr Leton Bremen Vis Tis Btolum. He glanced at his watch. 4 p.m. His jacket was hanging on a hook on the back of the door. Slowly he returned to his desk, mouthing a translation as he went. International Criminal Police Commission to Police Judiciaire in Paris. Krakow police report sighting of Pietr the Latvian en route to Bremen. That's the word salad I said. That's the translation of that. So this book opens on a sort of official telegram that needs to be translated, and it sort of bookends on it as well, except for the sort of denouement moment. It's really interesting. I think there's just like smart structuring happening there. But then there's the end of the book. In the prison in a top security cell, Pepito Moreto knew what fate awaited him. He walked in circles around his cell under the glum gaze of the guard, whose face could only be seen through the grid pattern on the wire screen over the hatch. In Pskov, an old lady in a folk hat that came down over both cheeks must have been on her way to church, in a sled behind a drunken coachman, whipping a pony trotting across the snow like a mechanical toy. That last image is, like, very out of character for a lot of the writing in the rest of this book. And I don't really know what to do with it, but it's I personally love a a moment where a book does a very clear formal bookend and seeing what exists outside of that, like sort of I mean, not literally speaking, but like sort of metaphorically speaking, when the thing that opens and the thing that closes are so completely apparent, and then what falls on the outsides of that, what falls in the margins of that, um, what falls in the space after the end of the bookend. Um, the thing I've been interested in since I was a kid, really ramped up when I did a lot of studying of literature. And I don't have like a strong thing to say here, partially because like I just didn't think this book was like that great. But like seeing that sort of formal play um, is always a joy to me, and I think I'm excited to read the final Maigret at the very least sometime in the next month or so. Anyway, thanks for not watching.